subject, but who collects the money and where does that 25% get paid? Who makes the decisions on the expenditure of that 25%?
Yes, can I hold on that question because I've got a little bit more on the bus system, and I want to make sure I will definitely answer that question. Was your question on the bus?
Yeah, is there been any talk about I think it's called the access bus system for disabled individuals that need door-to-door transportation, and how that might be addressed or improved?
Yeah, so two things. One is the immediate improvement to access here is that federal law requires that within 3/4 of a mile or a mile of any fixed route bus, SORTA has to provide access service. So if you live within a zone near a bus system, by expanding our system further out, nearly all of Hamilton County is covered under the access system, which today that is not the case. At the same time, SORTA is working with human service agencies, disability advocates, and their board and staff to focus on a sort of a reinventing access system to not only improve the places they go, but the type of service they provide. So how do they provide better alerts and information to riders? They've also brought that service back in-house. They have been contracting that to a third party. They have brought that in-house so they have more control over the quality of the service they provide. So I'm going to walk through a few of the maps and I'm going to get to the infrastructure piece. This is the frequency throughout Hamilton County today. The thicker the line, the more frequent the service. So the thickest line is 15 minutes or less, and then you get smaller and thinner as you get closer to 60 minutes. So this is today, this is the future. Back too far. Today, the future. What you see to the technology question, those zones in the northern suburbs are demand response areas where the bus would deviate from its route to connect people into Springdale and Blue Ash and other areas to connect to jobs. You see considerably more frequent service. You see additional crosstown service and more frequent service out into the suburbs. This is just those 15 minutes or better routes, and this is the future. These are your crosstown routes. So your ability to get from one side of town to the other is effectively either catching one of these buses or going all the way downtown and getting a new bus and going out. This is the future. This big straight line you see across is Galbraith Road. So significant new crosstown service on Galbraith. This is our 24-hour service today. If you squint really hard, you still won't see anything. We have 0 24-hour service. This is 24-hour service in the future. These routes today carry 50% of all riders.
So those are the route numbers up there?
Yes, yes. So it's effectively, I get this, I should label these, Glenway, Hamilton, Winton, Reading, Madison, and Erie, thank you. And you'll note that those extend out past, in some cases they extend out past the city limits, in other cases they don't. A lot of service ties into the end of the Route 33.
Now, I noticed there are no routes that are going out to the east side. I know that 28 was recently, the routes were cut out to like Milford, out Batavia that way. Are there plans to improve the routes out to the east side?
So, I don't know. Once you get past the county line, that's a whole different conversation about service. So you'll see improvements in as far as Anderson and then some other points northeast. But as you go even further out to the county line, past the county line, that's a conversation with CTC, the transit authority there, and SORTA. So they have some contract service, but not a ton. So what does this mean? All of this mean for job access? What we know is that there are 20,000 jobs that will be connected to the transit system that have 0 service today. What that 20,000 number does not include is the number of jobs that go from having a bus every 60 or 75 minutes to every 20, 30, or 45 minutes. So these are just jobs, and they represent $850 million in wages that have absolutely no service today, which will be reachable in the future. What we also know is that those 24-hour routes that I mentioned to you, the ones that carry about 50% of all riders today, are connected to almost 350,000 jobs. Moving on to the infrastructure piece, we've identified about $1.1 billion worth of projects that overlap this new public transit system. As I mentioned, those are big things like the Western Hills Viaduct, like Columbia Parkway. But there are also simple things like repaving pieces of Reading Road or adding sidewalks to parts of the community that don't have sidewalks. And so to your question about how this process is going to work, SORTA is the fiduciary agent. They're the taxing entity. They will bring in the dollars. State law, which was clarified over the last year, requires that SORTA work in partnership with a body called the Public Works Integrating Committee that has appointees from the city and from the county, from the townships, and the the small municipalities across the region. So they will review and approve projects in partnership with SORTA before SORTA spends those dollars. So if you're in the transportation space, what will happen is that there will be a call for projects, an annual call for projects. There'll be a competitive bidding and scoring process where that body will review projects, and then they'll make determinations with the SORTA board on where projects, what projects will be funded. Similar to a track process of the Ohio Department of Transportation or any of OKI's scoring processes as it relates to the dollars that they expend. So we'll have $30 million, and it will grow obviously with inflation and with the sales tax, that those two bodies will work together to review and approve, and every local community who has infrastructure related to the provision of the bus service will be able to apply for those funds.
So could you give an example like Columbia Parkway? Because in the city of Cincinnati, the city is taking care of that right now, as far as I can tell from signs and news reports. And now we're going to have another body sort of decide what might be better? No,
SORTA certainly would not decide. What would happen was the city would put in an application for funds through this project, through this process, and SORTA would contract with the city to provide funds for that project. The same would be true if say, Rapid Run in Green Township, which I know is on the list of projects for the county engineer at some point. If they said we want to apply for dollars to help do the Rapid Run project, SORTA would not be the decision maker on how it would be engineered, how it would be done, when it would get done, who would do the work. They would be a partner for local communities, and they would be a funding partner for local communities in the same way that the Ohio Department of Transportation or OKI or the federal government or others would be a partner. So they're not the decision maker; they're a funder. And local communities would still have control over which projects come in.
Pete, what's the overall governance now for SORTA? I'm no expert on it.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff in the paper. You might need a citizen, or at least read and think it's been chaotic. And the whole thing with all this money gets back to leadership.
Yeah.
And so could you fill us in, others may know it.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to lead it?
Yeah.
What's the board? Who's going to be on the board that's going to have to oversee how all this money is spent?
That's the right question to be asking. So the SORTA board today is 13 members. It's 7 appointed by the city of Cincinnati, 6 appointed by Hamilton County. The reason that is the case is because the city is the sole funder of the system through the earnings tax. And so in 2008, the city and the county came to an agreement that as long as the city was the sole funder, they would have a majority appointment of the board. That agreement also states that if the funding system changes, that the county commission would be the majority appointee, the body that appoints the majority of the board. And so since transit authorities are functions of county government, the county commissioners will appoint the majority of the board, which is the same way it's done in every other transit authority in the country. I think to your question about leadership, I've worked really closely with Craig Cassee, who's the board chair, works at Michelman, Blue Ash. The appointees to this board have been incredible, and it's changed over time, right? So the county commissioners appointed a number of new appointees 2 years ago. Mayor Cranley and City Council have appointed a number of folks to this board. This is a board that is more focused than I've ever seen them be in terms of solutions. They, in all of this levy conversation, the charge to them was always make sure that we can implement a plan that we know impacts the community in a meaningful way and actually solves the problem we're trying to solve for, and not a penny more. And so this group went from they had options of a 0.5% sales tax all the way to a 1% sales tax in terms of what that would get you. They settled in at this rate and a plan, and I think they sharpened their pencils incredibly well. So we've done an analysis through Ernst & Young of sort of their management, of their budget, how they operate, how they benchmark with peers, and they benchmark incredibly favorably.
So it's going to be a new board.
It will be a new board.
Have they decided how many from which group?
The agreement calls for a majority from the county, but they have not finalized.
Is it still going to be 13, or is that not?
The county commission has control over that.
They're going to decide?
Yeah.
Who's the CEO now?
Daryl Haley, he has been in operations for the organization for like 6 or 7 years. He was interim CEO in between the last 2 CEOs. Daryl, when I worked at City Hall, Daryl was the one person I knew I could pick up the phone and call and get answers at Sorta. He has as much respect from the bus drivers in the system as the board members who are on his board. I don't think you'll meet a person who isn't impressed with Daryl's leadership. I think they've got the right person.
And there's people under them.
Yeah.
And this is doubling the amount of money they have to spend overnight.
Yeah.
A bunch of money.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
Absolutely it is.
Is the chamber going to stay involved?
Yes, we have said time and again that our involvement in this doesn't stop on March 18th, although I may take a small vacation. But, my role isn't going away. I think there are so many conversations about how we implement this, how do we support them in getting it done, and then how do we make sure that as we think about what comes next and what changes, that they're continuing to be on the front end of it, that they have to be involved, because we have to stay involved.
I hope the levy passes, I hope it passes. In the event it does not,
Yeah.
what would the consequences be?
I mean, not to be really doom and gloom, but if we fail, and if we do nothing after that, and I think there will have to be a real conversation about why we weren't successful, which I hate even saying, because I think we will be successful.
Would everything stay the same?
No, certainly not. So Sorta every year has to have a balanced budget, and at the beginning of each year, because of the cost of, I'm sorry?
They need a balance.
They have to have a balanced budget.
Okay.
As the earnings tax continues to not meet the needs of the organization, and as the cost of operating the system continues to go up, they'll have to decide whether to cut service or raise fares. And at a certain point, they'll have to do both. The system will drastically decrease. It will continue to not work for folks in an even worse and worse way.
I have another question.
Yeah.
It's changing the subject a little bit, but not much. There's this route called Metroplex, and there's only one schedule, there's one map, and it only goes that way.
Yep.
Is there anything in the plans to increase it? Maybe make it go in the other direction too?
Yep. So Metroplex is what you would consider bus rapid transit light. Bus rapid transit is limited stop, high frequency public transit service that's you put it on your most dense corridors, partly because you know it's going to carry the most people, but also because you want to provide the highest quality, highest frequency service in the place where there are the most people. This plan calls for 2 bus rapid transit corridors in addition to what Metro Plus already is, and you could even improve on Metro Plus to allow the bus to, for example, jump the queue, so it's the first in line at the traffic stop and it moves even faster than cars do. The reason you don't see those on the map here is because doing BRT takes more than 3 or 4 years. They've identified corridors where you could do bus rapid transit, but they want to make sure that they're out in the community after this levy passes saying, we think BRT is right on Reading Road, we think it's right on Glenway, we think it's right here. Let's make sure we're implementing it in the right places at the right time, but there are funds to do more of that in this plan. So the last 2 things I would share with you, really the last one is, what was I already on? Okay, so the tax implications of this. So if you live or work in the city of Cincinnati and make just more than $16,000 a year, you actually see your taxes go down under this plan. So the amount you pay in earnings tax eliminating, and then the amount you pay in sales tax increasing. Like I said, if you live or work in the city, it's actually a net positive for you. 2 things to note on this. 1, 50% of the sales tax, roughly 50% of the sales tax is paid for by folks who don't live in Hamilton County. So the base on this tax is incredibly broad. 2, and this is an important conversation, it's an incredibly important topic. Sales taxes, Sorta has implemented what they're calling a transportation empowerment fund to provide discounted rides for folks under a certain threshold of income to make sure that those who are in most need of the service, those who may be impacted negatively by the tax shift, also have better access to a discounted trip ticket. The other piece on that is that if you talk to the Human Services Chamber, who's been really advocating for that empowerment fund, they will tell you that the number of folks that their agencies serve who may take the bus 5 days a week to their job, but when they work on a Saturday or a Sunday, they can't take the bus anymore, they have to take an Uber or a Lyft, and they go from paying $1.75 in their fare to paying $5, $6, $7, $10, $15 for that Uber ride. The amount they see in a sales tax, increase is immediately offset by one additional bus trip that's not a rideshare trip. And the number of jobs that are accessible, that are better jobs, higher paying jobs, is significant. And so we really view this as an opportunity to move folks and put them on pathways to the middle class and have that mobility from an economic perspective.